This is a review of the Taytools Taylor Toolworks number 9.5 block plane. It's based on a Stanley 9.5 block plane, according to the Taytools website. Pretty good price on it. I think I paid about $75 on sale. Normally, a little over $90. My only problem with it, which I'll get into in a bit, was the angle of the grind on the blade, which I think will ultimately be okay, but it was, not perfect. It's got an adjustable throat that opens and closes. Before I got to any sharpening on it, I had to clean up some kind of sticky grease that was on it when it was packed, which I've seen on a lot of tools, but it cleans up easily with just a little glass cleaner. It just took a couple of minutes to get it cleaned up. So my issue with the blade angle, the website says it's ground at 25 degrees, and I would have expected 25 degrees. That's a pretty normal blade angle, grind angle for a plain blade. But when I went to hone it at 25 degrees, I was only honing the back of the bevel. It wasn't honing, the whole thing or even the front of it. And that's not really useful just to hone the back because it's really never going to get sharp. So I ended up honing it partially at 30 degrees, and I'll get to that when I get to the honing part. In the meantime, the blade was flat. This is just a piece of marble or granite or something I used to check for flatness, and it's quite flat. And the body of the plane itself was flat too. So I really have no issues at all with that. There's no wobble when you push on a corner. So it's a nice tool from that perspective. My sharpening kit is up on a French cleat. It's just all in a nice box that sort of hooks onto the end of my workbench. It's some sharpening stones, and I use a Veritas honing guide that lets you set the angle. You've got to know the width of the blade. These are 1 5/8. And then you slide them into this honing guide, and it lets you pick, do I want 25, do I want 30, and depending on how far it slides the blade forward, it gives you, a pretty good representation of the angle. I guess it's possible I loaded it wrong, or maybe the angle isn't right on the Veritas honing guide, but I've used it a few times. I think it's usually pretty accurate, so I think the fault was with the blade. It was just not truly at 25 degrees. It was maybe, 27, 28, because it wasn't quite 30 either. In any event, I slipped it in at the 25 marker, and I honed it for a while, and like I say, I noticed it was only honing the back of that bevel. So long story short, I took it out, spent a little bit more time honing it at 30 and got a sharp edge on it at least. I think, at some time when I have, half hour, 45 minutes, because it's going to take that long, I'll probably go back and grind the whole thing down at a true 25. But, it's going to take some doing because, having to go from a 27 to a 25, you really got to, cut a lot of metal off to get that. You're not just cutting a nice new sharp edge in the front, you've got to recut that whole bevel. So that's going to be some work. I'll eventually get to it, but not anytime soon. So here I'm starting to wonder if it's really 25, and I'm noticing as I lift it up, the angle seems sharper than 25, seems steeper than 25, and I could tell I was only honing the back of that. So I'm going to reset it, put it back in the honing guide at 30, and get a sharp edge on it. So I use diamond stones for sharpening, and I just wet them down with that glass cleaner. They've lasted me a long time. I think they work really well. It was a nice investment to get these diamond stones. They go in a holder. I think I have 4 different grits, and here I'm working, I think, the most aggressive, the coarsest grit to start with. That takes a while to get the edge started, and then I went through all the other 4 grits pretty quickly. I don't know if you can see it, but the box that the sharpening system is in has a little block on the end of it, so I can push against it, against the bench, and it doesn't slide around on the bench. Sometimes it slides towards me a little bit, but it doesn't slide when I'm pushing away from myself. I'm going to show the blade here and try to wiggle it back and forth a little bit. It wasn't really straight either. Like you can tell it's sort of honing more on the one side than the other. As I move it around in the light, the shiniest part right down the end of it is what got honed. But nonetheless, you know, it fit back in the plane fine, and it's taking some pretty nice shavings here on a piece of oak. I don't have any problem at all. In fact, it was cutting a little bit too deep to start with. It was going pretty well, but I thought I could get a finer and prettier cut, you know, by backing off on the blade a little bit. So I'm just doing that a couple of times, and you know, got some nice shavings. Those are fine for a block plane, and the wood feels really smooth. Worked really well to kind of bevel over those edges a little bit on that board, and I pulled it up and tried doing some kind of end grain on it. That's always hard, you know, to get it to cut end grain, but it does fine. I think it does what a block plane ought to do. So maybe it'll be even a little bit better once I get my honing angle figured out on it to get it down to a true 25, but I think it's a nice plane and it's a good addition to the workshop. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more videos coming up. The little block plane lives in its own little French cleat on the plane wall.